Hey friends, today I'm going to show you how to make this adorable mini Santa Claus cake. We're using just buttercream, no fondant. Look at his little face. We're going to start by baking up our cake layers. This is just a classic vanilla cake recipe, but we're going to dye it partly red so we get a nice candy cane striped effect. Start with our softened butter and our sugar, and we cream those together. You can use a stand mixer or a hand mixer. Once they've started to come together, we're going to add in our vegetable oil. And then you want to beat this mixture until it all comes together and it's nice, light, and fluffy. Then we're gonna add in our eggs one at a time, mixing between each one. This is the part where we're gonna incorporate a lot of air into the batter, which helps the cake be nice, light, and fluffy. So take your time with this step and make sure you're fully mixing everything together. The mixture should become paler, like a light yellow in color. Obviously, it depends on what color your yolks are. I know some of you guys have like crazy bright orange yolks, but either way, the color should be lighter than it was when you started. Then we add in our vanilla and mix that. Then comes our mix of Greek yogurt or sour cream and milk or a milk alternative. Mine looks kind of brown because I was using oat milk because that's what I had. Then you mix that in again, just until everything's combined nicely. And lastly is our dry ingredients. At this point, we're no longer using the mixer because you do not want to overmix. That will lead to a dense and chewy cake. So once the dry ingredients are in, we're just gonna fold them in using a spatula. When you do it by hand, this helps prevent overmixing because it's a lot more physical work. So you wanna get to the point where it's just combined and you no longer see any of that flour remaining. Now for the fun part. This is obviously totally optional, but I separated about half of the batter into a different bowl and then used some red gel food dye to dye half of it a nice red color. I wanted a tall cake here, so I'm doing 3 layers of 5-inch cake tins. But you could also use 3 6-inch pans. They would just be a bit shorter. 2 6-inch pans, they would be a bit taller. You get the idea. To prep my pans, I put a parchment circle on the bottom and then just spray with cooking spray, making sure I get all along the bottom and all up the sides. Now to get the candy cane striped effect, I scooped in 1 scoop of the plain white and then put a scoop of the red on top of that and repeated back and forth, alternating until I had all the batter I wanted. I also kind of shook out the pan to get the batter to spread a bit because it's fairly thick, so it kind of just stacks up if you keep scooping it into the same spot. Now you could choose to run a toothpick through this if you wanted a marble effect, but I wanted it more stripy, so I left it. Did that for all 3 pans and then baked those in the oven at 350 for about 34 minutes. Then I flipped them onto my cooling rack to cool just slightly before wrapping them in plastic wrap and putting them in the freezer. I like to decorate my cakes from frozen. It makes them easier to work with, but it also locks in the moisture. Now to decorate, I used a green buttercream just to go with the Christmas theme, but a white would look really nice too. My flavor here is actually a combination of peanut, caramel, and coffee because I just used up a bunch of leftover buttercream that I had. I will say it was a delicious combination. So you can do that, but another good option would be perhaps a peppermint buttercream if you're into that for a bit more of a festive flavor. I didn't have any fillings, so the stacking process here was pretty easy. Just plop some icing on top of the layer, spread it around, put the next layer on, and repeat all the way up. for the Santa face, I have a little bit of buttercream dyed to like a pale skin tone, and I'm just gonna put that on the upper half of one side of the cake because Santa's face is only peeking through around his hat and mustache and beard. Now, I made the area very big because I didn't want to run out of room, and I would probably recommend going bigger than you think you need to because you can't really go back and add more later. I heated up my scraper under the tap with some hot water just to make sure I was getting a nice smooth finish here. And then a nice bonus tip for you guys, whatever skin colored frosting you have left, you can just throw in and mix that up with the red frosting that you're going to need for his hat. Next up, I used a toothpick just to mark out where Santa's eyes were going to be, as well as his mustache and the floppy little top part of his hat that's going to hang over his face, so that when I do the piping later of his beard, mustache, and hat, I know exactly where to line it all up. Now, for the beard, I have a Wilton open star tip, and I'm just piping lots and lots of dollops of white frosting, starting just under his mustache and going all the way up to the edge of where the hat is going to be, and then also going all the way around the back, because this is also like Santa's hair. It does not have to be super precise. Just get after it, cover that thing in dollops of frosting. Now, for Santa's mustache, I switched to a Wilton 1M open star tip and just did 2 swoops starting in the middle and curving to the outside of his face. And then I stayed with that same Wilton 1M star tip to do rosettes along the top border, and these are kind of like the edge of Santa's hat. I had to go back in and finish up the back of Santa's head. And now for the hat, I used a red buttercream and another Wilton star tip. You can use whatever shape you want, really. I believe this is the 6B or the 2B, whichever one's the biggest open star. And I just piped red all the way around the perimeter and then filled that in. And eventually I also added another layer on top, so the hat was kind of 3D. Then, of course, had to get the bit of the hat that kind of hangs over the side of his face. The last finishing touch on the hat was one more rosette as Santa's little pom-pom. Then I just went back in with that star tip to fill in any gaps that I saw, anywhere that I could see through to his skin color or even to the green underneath. Now we're gonna add Santa's eyes. For this, I just used 2 chocolate chips and then I pressed them into the buttercream at the spot that I had marked with the toothpick earlier. And lastly, for a finishing touch, of course, I gotta add some edible glitter, just for that extra holiday festive spirit. And that's it. This is the final look. I love this cake design because it's mostly just piping, and fairly abstract piping at that. It doesn't have to be super precise. It's definitely one of those trust the process kind of things, but in the end, I believe it's a beautiful finished product, and I truly think that this is something that everyone can do at home. Oh, and of course, I've got a cut shot for you guys here to show those beautiful layers on the inside. Mr. Hound had to get a first look, of course. So you can see that the dyeing and layering process gives us an almost candy cane look, and that green frosting brings the Christmas spirit.